I'd like to open the meeting at the Town of Denmark Select Board, June 30th, 2026. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'll do that after. We have minutes of June 16th and May 12th. You guys have any comments or?
Nope, I'm good.
I had a couple that I mentioned.
In the
The June 6th, I was talking to him prior. June 16th was just combining those two paragraphs because it was all discussion about Bush Row. And it was just a little confusing. And then the new business said the town's 200 years old, it's 220. Just to be consistent, but
Yep.
that's fine. Then May 12th is okay. So I hear a motion to approve May 12th and June 16th, 2026 minutes.
I make the motion.
Okay. Any comments? All in favor? Aye. Okay. First on the list. For the public, just a reminder, please sign in if you haven't already. Blue Triton Poland Spring permit renewal. We currently have that before we do our normal old and new business. I'll remind everybody today it's the opportunity for Blue Triton Poland Spring to present to the Select Board, I guess, a summary presentation of the renewal application to kind of help us see, along with Rick's, our technical consultant, to see for completeness if the application has met all the requirements for applying, not technical requirements necessarily, but they've met all the checkoffs, what needs, maps and discussions of things and whatnot. If that's all been complete, we have 30 days, which is July 14th, because the permit application was submitted on June 15th. So by the ordinance, the board has 30 days to decide whether it's complete or not. Okay, so this is today's to help the board and our consultant listen to Poland Spring present, and there, if there's dialogue back and forth between us and so forth. But other than that, as we've talked about at our other meetings and so forth, once the permit application is deemed complete, there's 30 days. We have 30 days to set up a public hearing, which if it does occur on July 14th, it's determined complete. The first hearing would be approximately August 11th or somewhere in that period. And it's basically a public hearing. It's, from what I've been told, it's one public hearing. Even if it's 3 meetings, 2-3 meetings, they just get continued. So it's not one first public hearing or a second public hearing. We opened the public hearing process. So, and the ordinance does allow more time with the application being required to be submitted 6 months in advance. So I think we'll have plenty of time in between if we need more hearings. In the past, it was a little more restrictive because of timing requirements in the ordinance. So, the board's open to having as many hearings as we need, within there, that'll get us to where we need to be. So I think that's probably as far as we need to go right now, as far as get up to the public hearing. So with that, welcome, Blue Triton Poland Spring, and I'll let you, I guess, Mark, explain what you plan tonight to show and so forth, presentation.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, board. Betty, thank you for putting this together. Appreciate it. So we have a 3-part presentation. I have a little introduction. Matt's going to talk into detailed about hydrogeology. I hope we don't put people to sleep. But Matt's going to go into some real detail, mostly for Rick's attention. And then Dan Diffin is going to close out with our decommissioning plan, which is new under the new ordinance. So I'm Mark Dubois. I'm a senior natural resource manager for Poland Spring. I'm a Mainer. I grew up around here. I caught my first fish on Brandy Pond and skied Pleasant Mountain. I have a bachelor's degree in geology from the University of Maine. Go Bearcats. Oh, no, go Black Bears, sorry. And I have a MS in hydrogeology from the University of Cincinnati. That's the Bearcats. So I never left the Bears, really. I studied glacier geology since I was 18 at the University of Maine, and I did climate change work using glaciers in college. So I have 22 years at Poland Spring now. I've been here for all the permit renewals. I've been here since the beginning, in 2004-ish. I cover all 10 Poland Spring sites in Maine. Poland Spring has 800 employees about right now, a little bit over. And we have 3 factories in the state of Maine: Hollis, Kingfield, and Poland. All 10 spring sites are really special for us, as is the spring site at Cold Spring. Very, very special to us. We cannot replace these resources. I think Rick can attest to it. They cannot be replaced. It would take 5 or 10 years to replace a source like this. And I'm going to introduce our team again. And Matt Reynolds from Drumlin Environmental is a hydrogeologist, and Dan Diffin is from CV and Mahar Engineers, and helped us put the application together. So slide 1 here. My son tells me not to use AI, but I used it a little bit. So we're going to have some caveats. This first slide was done with AI. So Poland Spring is really old. So I looked up a few old brands in the U.S. Today. You can see Baker's Chocolate is the oldest in Dorchester, Mass. Going down through a few beer companies. Poland Spring is right there in 1845, so we've been in business for 181 years. Campbell's Soup kind of surprises me after us, Hershey Chocolate, Quaker Oats. So Poland Spring's right in the middle there in 1845. That's the first commercial sale of water. Heather, I think they were actually bottling some water before that, but that's the first commercial sale is 1845. So bear in mind this was gathered with some AI data, so it might be a little inaccurate, but that's what the AI machine gave me today. So what are we here in Denmark for? Why is Poland Spring in Denmark? We're here in Denmark because of a really good aquifer that is pretty local to Denmark. It covers the Beaver Brook drainage basin. It doesn't cover over to Freiburg. It doesn't go to Brownfield. The aquifer itself is mapped in those areas, but the water doesn't travel from here to Freiburg or from Freiburg back to here. Water is kept in a watershed that's about 3,000 acres in size. So it's not huge, 3,000 acres. Water is moving left to right on this picture here. So water is heading towards the spring down here. And you can see the water table at the top surface. Right up here, going down towards the spring. The definition of a spring is the intersection of the water table and the ground surface. So that's what we have going on the right there. We only use sand and gravel aquifers in Maine, so we only use this stuff that's up top. We don't use any bedrock sources in Maine. So by nature, our sources are very shallow. They're under 100 feet deep. Very shallow. So I was here when we first came to town in 2004. We drove past your house, Andy, and within about 5 minutes we ran into a selectman. He was curious about what we were doing, and that led to the groundwater ordinance that you guys enacted way back then for the first permit in 2005. As Matt will explain, this is one of the most important things of our talk today, so I can have your attention. But as Matt will explain, the DEP feels, as we do, that the spring is actually the area to look for impacts due to our operation. And the reason for that is we withdraw water close to the spring right in here. And if we have drawdowns that are excessive or if we cause an issue, it's going to be felt first at the spring. It's very important. We have close monitoring of that spring area. We monitor it really, really closely. And this next slide shows you how we monitor springs. So this is what we call a piezometer or a drive point. It's actually shoved right into the spring. You could almost do it by hand, but you use a small hammer to do it. These pipes are only about 5 to 10 feet deep, maximum 15 feet deep. And you can see a water level up in this pipe up here. So even with full pipe flow, the spring is pushing out and pushing water up to the Earth's surface here. With full flow out of this pipe, you still have a standing water level in the piezometer tube up here. That's a pretty prolific spring. You can also see in this picture it doesn't allow ice to form. So ice is being melted as that warmer temperature spring water comes to the surface. So I don't live here in Denmark, but I know a lot of good people that do. Let me give you an example. We have an elderly couple that was recently brought to our attention that they had some water issues at their house. And we started talking with them. We heard through the grapevine that they had some water issues. We reached out. We started bringing them bottled water because they had a shallow well that was having some troubles. And, whoops. Sorry. And so we got to know this couple. We started bringing them water, and now my staff, as of the beginning of this year, just started bringing them water. They didn't even ask me anymore. So I have a geologist out there bringing this couple water because they're in trouble. The well is back up now. In May, that shallow well that couple had is back up. We're not delivering water anymore now, but we do check on the well for the older couple and give them a little bit better comfort. So I've seen all sorts of wells in Denmark over the years, hand-dug wells, drive points like this well. You can make a water supply well in Maine simply by driving one of these into the ground. It's called a drive point or a piezometer. It has a nice tip on it. You pound it into the ground. Water stays, goes through the inside, and gravel stays on the outside, and you can extract water. So this is what's at the bottom of these pipes. It's just one of these drive points letting water into the drive point apparatus here. Pass that around. Don't hit anybody with that, it's rather heavy. So that elderly couple's water problems arose from the fact that they had a shallow well. The state geologist indicates that about 10 to 15% of wells in Maine are shallow. So that means that during times of drought, 10 to 15% of the wells in Denmark will be potentially in trouble because of their shallow construction. Those wells don't meet modern construction standards and can be prone to issues. If I recall, I was a little bit in the hot seat recently, Andy, because we went and fixed somebody's drive point, Nancy Dunn on Long Pond. And we did that. Folks asked why we would do that. And it's the neighborly thing to do. She gave us access to her property for about 21 years to monitor her well. And when she had a problem with her well, I stepped up and gave her a hand. We wound up paying half of her well cost that she took. She didn't have a problem with the water supply. The water level was there. She lives right on Long Pond. But her drive point, which is that thing, was clogged up. And she needed to drive a new one. And that happens after about 20 years with a drive point. They don't have long-term satisfaction, let me tell you that. Like a modern constructed well will last you a long time, but a drive point might last you 10, 15 years. So we have a lot of those out in Maine. I've seen a lot of them, and it's the same device that we use to monitor the springs here in this picture. Another important aspect of our project here is when I first came to town, as I mentioned, we met the selectmen. We also met Lori and others. Lori was really concerned with her groundwater well. It was a shallow well system. Andy, I believe you live in the same neighborhood. Shallow well system, I'd say it was part of that 10 to 15% of wells that are shallow today. We were able to drill a new well and alleviate her concerns because she was quite concerned and worried about her water supply. I think that's the neighborly thing to do, and I think it's the right thing to do. So we've gotten better over time now. When I first started with the company, it was about 15 to 20% wells in Maine were shallow. Now it's 10 to 15% or so. So we've gotten better through droughts. Does anybody want to hazard a guess why we've gotten better over time on our dry wells and shallow wells? It's because people have replaced their wells over time. You see that you have an issue and you have to eventually cough up the money to replace a well. And wells aren't cheap. They're 5 to 10 grand. 20 years ago, they're 25 grand or more now to get it all hooked up. So they're not cheap endeavors. Another important issue to discuss tonight is Long Pond. So Matt has some detailed data that he's going to discuss about the role and interrelationship of Long Pond with the aquifer. And Rick, I think we have some new data for you in the application that you're not aware of, maybe that we surveyed all the wells on the north side of the pond. So you now have that data in your hands. That was something that's in the new ordinance, but we went ahead and did it early just to get ahead of the new ordinance. So we're going to talk about Long Pond and that survey data that we've been taking. Matt's going to review that closely. The last issue is real-time monitoring. I know people feel like real-time monitoring is a really good thing to do. It sounds fancy, but I am really, really not impressed with real-time monitoring. We try to do it at our work. I have about a 60 to 70% success rate, so about 30% failure rate on these systems. And what you have to do is you basically take a water level with a little device like this. It's called a transducer. So you lower that transducer down the well. That comes up to the top of the well with a cable. The cable goes into a modem. The modem talks to the cell phone. Cell phone puts it into your computer system. None of that is easy, especially when you don't have good cell phone reception like in West Denmark. I understand there's satellite systems now, and Rick might even know of some other systems that might work out, but I'm having trouble. I'm struggling with that type of monitoring system for something as important as this aquifer. I much prefer... Whoop. What did I do? There we go. I much prefer taking real water levels with one of these. I'll stay by the microphone. This is a water level meter, so it has a graduated tape measure. You lower this down a well. It goes down 100 feet. This one goes 100 feet. They make them to go down 500 feet if you want. Water, again, is very shallow in West Denmark, so we're getting water at a very shallow condition. You lower this down the well, and then the device gives you an alarm when you hit that water table. So the water table is at the top of the graphic there. And when we hit that water table with this device, it gives us a noise. We do that 12 times a month. Do that 12 times a month at all of our sites in Maine. We monitor over 500 stations like this every month, and we hire geologists to do that. I can't think of a better system than sending out a geologist once a month to measure the aquifer. It just simply doesn't move that fast. It's a labor saver in some places, Rick. I know you understand that, instead of monitoring, some people put these devices in to save labor and not go out and do the monitoring. And I would suggest that's not the case here, that we want to do that monthly monitoring. So just to put it in perspective, again, I relied on AI, Rick, so I'm going to have to rerun these numbers tomorrow and send you these slides tomorrow. But when you compare the water levels in West Denmark, which is this graph on the left, you see water levels rising on the right-hand side from approximately March through this week. So that's the water level rise in Denmark since the frost came out of the ground and we started getting recharge. So it goes from 379 and some change up to 381. That's about 1.5 feet of water level change in 110 days. So 1.5 feet of water level change in 110 days. I put the snail up there because the snail doesn't even actually put it to justice. The snail, a common snail, actually moves at 0.03 miles per hour. And the fastest snail in the world completes a 13-inch course in 2 minutes, which only brings him up to 0.06 miles per hour. So we converted the miles per hour to feet per day. which is a common term that Rick and other geologists use. The snail can run at about 460 feet per day. The vertical movement, Rick, I'm not talking about horizontal, but the vertical movement is about 0.0144 feet per day. So a very tiny amount, much smaller than a snail's movement. The snail is actually 32,000 times faster than groundwater movement at this site. So, again, just to refresh, we've been here in 2005 for the original permit. We've been back in 2008, 11, 16, 21, and now 26. We've been operating since 2010, so the first few years were not under operation. And that's the timeline, what brings us here. Forgot to pass this around. That's about $1,000, Rick. So, in essence, today we wanted to present to you that we have taken our charge here seriously. We've protected the aquifer. We've had no adverse impacts that would prevent our renewal. We're not changing any existing permit conditions. The pumping is still from 2 boreholes. We're going to run water to a load station. There's no change in that. Maximum manual withdrawal, daily withdrawal, maximum instantaneous withdrawal. None of this changes. We're not asking for anything different this time around. And the required monitoring stays the same. We have the boreholes that we monitor where we pull water. We monitor 19 monitoring wells, 6 piezometers like we passed around, 5 staff gauges, Long Pond, Beaver Brook, 10 domestic wells, wetlands, and precipitation. That does keep people busy during the year, believe it or not. And we believe our application meets all the requirements in Chapter 4. No increase in the water quantity to be extracted, no change in the location, no material failure to comply with any of the permit conditions of the expiring permit, no material failure to meet the performance standards, and there's been no significant credible evidence that our operations are unable to meet the performance standards in the future. So, while water may be a renewable resource, your time is not, so we're going to move things along with Matt Reynolds from Drumlin Environmental to walk through the actual application points. Do you guys have any questions before I sit down? No? Okay.
Thanks.
Good evening. As Mark said, I'm Matt Reynolds with Drumlin Environmental, and I'm the hydrogeologist who's involved with the project. What I'd like to do tonight is just walk through the material that's in the permit application in the hydrogeologic report. In some level of detail, there's more detail in the report so I won't try to cover every little piece of it. And if there's questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them as we go if you'd like. Basically, I'll talk about sort of those 4 bullets on the left, the setting, a little bit about the aquifer, some of the pump test evaluation, and the long-term monitoring. The application does have this table on the right that helps cross-reference the ordinance to where the pieces are for ease of navigation. Hopefully that's helpful. So starting with the hydrogeologic setting, as Mark said, this site is located within the Beaver Brook watershed in West Denmark. On that figure, the sort of darker area is part of a mapped sand and gravel aquifer. The watershed extends out to the east. It's not shown in this figure, the whole watershed. And again, for perspective, Mark mentioned 105 million gallons a year of withdrawal. So within that watershed, that 3,400 acre watershed, annually, on an average year, there's about 4,390 million gallons of water that rains into that on an average year. Some years, obviously, there's more than normal. Some years there's less than normal. But just for perspective, that's the amount of water that falls into that size of a watershed in Maine. As it's over, the site is part of a larger regional sand and gravel aquifer, and the site itself is shown at the bottom of the map here. There's the 2 boreholes, and the contributing area is roughly outlined by this blue dash here. That's been estimated at about 402 acres, and in the original applications, they estimated about 256 million gallons a year actually recharge the groundwater within that area. So more than twice as much water recharges that area as is proposed and has been withdrawn over the last 15 or 16 years. Generally, groundwater flows north to south down toward Beaver Brook, which is down here, and the springs, which are here. So that's sort of the overview of the hydrogeologic setting. One of the ordinance requirements is to provide aquifer characteristics. As I mentioned, there's a large sand and gravel aquifer. There's a couple of specific features. There's esker features, which Rick described to you in your last meeting, sort of a tunnel under the ice that gets very, very coarse gravelly material, and then there's sandy outwash deposits around that. The aquifer, the sand and gravel deposit is almost 90 feet thick in some places, and about 75 feet of that sand and gravel is saturated with water. So it's a fairly thick saturated zone. And so when we see changes in the water table of a few feet, that's of that 75 feet of thickness. As I said before, groundwater flows from north to south down toward the brook and the springs, and it's recharged on an ongoing basis by precipitation and then to some extent by leakage out of Long Pond. The next figure I'll show you, is a cross section that runs along this line here. So it's kind of a slice through the earth, and I'll point out some of those same features in this figure. And so this is included in the application, so you'll be able to look at it more. But basically, so here's the north, Long Pond is at this end, Beaver Brook is over here with the springs. The geology is this coarse sand and gravel. There's some zones that are a little finer sand. Under Long Pond is finer material and not shown really pronounced here, but also in the very bed of the pond is a sort of an organic muck that's built up over time. The aquifer is recharged by rainfall that falls through the sand and gravel. This is the water table. So water is flowing from left to right down toward the, as is shown in the blue arrows. And these are just some of the monitoring wells that are in place. So there's screened at different depths. This one here actually went all the way down to bedrock. So that just gives you a picture in a slice through the earth of what this aquifer looks like, where the water table is. There's other wells and other dimensions that this is one example of kind of what the system looks like. So a couple other things to point out about this aquifer. So as I mentioned, flow goes from north to south, discharges in the springs, and then to some extent in Beaver Brook. So this is a map of groundwater equipotentials. So these blue lines are sort of equal elevation in the groundwater, and they're higher here and they're lower here. So water flows sort of downhill, if you will, as shown by those blue lines. It sort of converges, it gathers here, and it supports the spring flow at this end. And another thing that we now have better data on as a result of our recent survey is we have monitoring points up near Long Pond, around the pond, but previously those weren't surveyed, so we didn't understand very well the elevation relationship. But what we found, and I'll talk about it a little more, is that the groundwater here is actually lower than the pond level. So the pond is at about 400 feet, and the groundwater is about 300 and 96, 94, 92, and so forth. So I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. The figure on the right is from the original pumping test that was done. And so there's concentric circles. This is drawdown. So this is change in the water table when you pump. In the middle, it's more. As you go out to the outside, it's less. This red line is a quarter of a foot. So it's very small change after pumping at 200 gallons a minute. And what this is actually a projection of if you pump this well at 200 gallons a minute for 180 days with no recharge, you would change the water table only within this red area here. So it's referred to as the zone of influence. And a couple of things that are important about that. So areas that are outside of that red circle basically have the pumping that's being done has little or no measurable effect on wells, the pond, other things that are outside that area as a result of it. The other thing to point out is this projection is for 180 days with no recharge. As we all know, we're in a very significant, we're just coming out of a very significant drought condition. But even in the drought we just went through, there was recharge. It was small, but there was recharge within that period of time. So 180 days is really an extreme condition that's represented by this area. And even the recent drought doesn't really reflect this kind of a projection. So it's important to keep that in mind.
About the droughts, do you?
No.
Excuse me, we're not.
Oh, I thought he said as we went on, okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I mentioned, this is more or less a presentation. When we reach the public hearing portion of the process, fire away.
Yeah,
If you don't mind, we'd appreciate it. Matt, can I
Yeah.
just ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So when you go back to the diagram that shows you
Yep.
the geology, one more back.
One more break, yep.
Is that an old picture? Because you're showing the groundwater going right up to the bottom of the pond. In fact, going above
Well,
the pond.
I'll explain it a little bit more, but so no, that is so the at the very most southern end of the pond, the groundwater is below. There's a gap between the bottom of the pond and the water table. As you go to the north, the pressure of the groundwater is this blue line, and the pressure of the pond is the pond top of the pond surface. And so what you have is the pressure of the groundwater is lower than the pressure of the pond, but the groundwater comes all the way up to the bottom of the pond. And what that means is that because the pond is at a higher pressure, that will push water down out the bottom of the pond. So water's gonna move from high pressure to lower pressure.
So like in that area currently, do we have wells during the actual extraction activities these past so many years to show that?
Yeah,
If the groundwater's being, lowered, is the pond pushing it lower, and subsequent, like you said, you're getting leakage out of the pond?
Yeah, I have a slide that's a few on that where we can talk about it a little bit more because it's a good question.
Okay.
But yes, that's and all the way to the north, the pond is been reported to be fed by springs, and in that case, the groundwater may be higher than the pond at the north end of the pond. But again, at the north end of the pond is way outside of this pumping influence. So that dynamic between the groundwater and the pond is independent of what's going on down here. But yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit more. So next couple of slides sort of summarize. Again, there's more detail in the application, but again, I'm happy to answer questions. The next couple slides sort of summarize a couple of different influences based on the data. So the first question is influence on the groundwater that has been, that pumping has caused. So these bars here are the annual pumping for each of the years, since 2010. So you can see that in 2010 there was maybe 500,000. 50 million gallons or so. There were a couple years where it was close to 100 million gallons, and so forth. And basically, the bottom two graphs are the graph of wells that are right next to the boreholes. So they are the most influenced by the pumping of those boreholes. And as you can see, generally, so you've probably looked at this kind of data before. There's this wavy pattern. The wavy pattern reflects a couple things. One case is so in a typical year, you get the water level rises in the spring when you have a lot of snow melt and runoff, and then it falls in the summer into the fall, and it rises again. So that sawtooth pattern is in part that seasonal variation, and then you have wet years and you have dry years, and so it tends to vary. But overall, even right close to the boreholes, you basically have a steady water table. There's no significant downward trend in that water table over time. And you can explain the slight variations if you just look at the different precipitation each year. So this says to me that the overall pumping withdrawal has not had any detrimental effect on the groundwater right near the boreholes, and those are the most sensitive locations. So further away, that influence is going to be, diminishing and less. The other thing that's been discussed is, and let me go back here for just a second. So I forgot to point this out. One of the wells in the monitoring network is MW8. It's way up here, and so it's quite far away from all the pumping influences, and that's that well at the top. That's that green line at the top. So that's the sort of background natural water table fluctuation that's occurred in the 26 years or 16 years. I'm sorry, since the site, since monitoring has been at the site. The reason that the fluctuations up here are a little bit bigger, and that's natural because it's further away from a groundwater discharge point, which is kind of minutia. You don't need to worry about it, I guess, so we can talk about. But anyway, so this is background conditions, far, far away from the pumping influence. This is as close as you can get to the pumping influence. I see very little indication that there's been any negative influence. In fact, I see no indication that there has, based on this. And there's more data in the report. So another question is has there been an influence on Beaver Brook? This is the flow data that we report to the town every month for Beaver Brook, and as you can see, it goes up and down. Rains hard, you get a lot of runoff. You hardly get any rain. You get the flow gets low. Couple things there is an alert level for Beaver Brook. Over time, the flow has always been above that. And as you can see, even recently in the drought conditions, 2016 was a dry year. The Beaver Brook is, that the characteristics of the flow variability are just the same now as they have been all along. No negative influence from the operation and the withdrawals at Cold Spring. The groundwater ordinance, the new one expands on it a little bit, but there's always been a component about the potential for influence on quality. And so this just sort of summarizes. Basically, there are naturally occurring minerals in some locations. Iron, manganese, arsenic, and uranium are good examples. Those are just naturally occurring in different aquifer types and different rock types and so forth. They're not present in the groundwater in the aquifer in this part of the, what I'll call the Cold Spring aquifer. And there was domestic well monitoring early on that didn't find high levels above drinking water standards. Ongoing monitoring of turbidity, clarity, and odor, which is something that's again required that we report, that hasn't changed over time. There's annual sampling of the boreholes, and that hasn't changed. So collectively, there's no indication, first of all, that the aquifer is susceptible to the presence and the mobilization of these compounds, or that that's occurred. And there's more information in the application about that. And so, Andy, you brought up this issue about Long Pond. And again, this is generally information that since we surveyed, we have a better handle on things. And so this is recent information that Rick didn't, hasn't had in the past, hasn't had the benefit of. But so there's a couple slides here, but I'll just walk you through this because it's a bit complicated, and I apologize for the details. So first of all, we wanted to look all the way back in the data. So we have water levels from around this area that date way back. What we didn't have is survey to allow us to put these in perspective with each other. So basically, the top light blue here is Long Pond over time. So you can see how it goes up and down over time. And that's been the range. There are some times when there's gaps, and that's in the winter when it's ice, and there's a few times when the level has been below our gauges. But you can see that pattern. And I'll point out that it looks a lot like the groundwater patterns we talked about. It goes up in the spring and it comes down in the fall. And that's because the pond is really influenced by groundwater overall in the aquifer. The next, this line here is the water level from the town well. I'll call it the town well, 101. It's right beside the pond here. And we've had this data, we just haven't been able to plot it in relation to the pond. But what you can see here is that that groundwater there is always 3 or 4 or 5 feet lower than the pond. And it's consistent. It's over time, even when before the pumping began, which is out in 2010 here. So groundwater here is below the pond level at this location consistently all the time. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Poland Spring added another domestic well here, which is really a 2-inch observation well on this property here, which is DW12. And it's a little hard to see in this color scheme, but basically the data from DW12 is out here. It's virtually the same as 101. It's always below the pond level. And so what we did in the figure before is basically there's a groundwater contour, there's a groundwater elevation line that just runs right under the pond that connects these 2 points. And it's always lower than the pond. This is MW5, which is to the south of the pond. But you can see consistently at this end of the pond, groundwater is always below the pond level. The next figure is another set of data from further to the north. So there's a domestic well that we've been monitoring here, and there's another one that's relatively newer on this other side. Same thing, pond is blue, and as you get up to the middle of the pond, this brown line is this well here where we have data that goes all the way back to 2005, and then this other line over here is the newer well. But the same situation. Those are less, so they're only a couple feet below the pond level, but very consistent over time. That shows that the groundwater here is lower than the pond level. Not as low as down here, but it's still lower than the pond level. And so this again is this is that same figure again, Andy. Basically at the southern end of the pond, there's actually a gap between the bottom of the pond and the groundwater level. And water from the pond leaks out the bottom. There's that organic muck in the bottom, and it leaks out the bottom because the pressure at the pond surface is higher than the pressure at the groundwater. And as you go to the north, that difference gets less, but there's pressure the pond is higher than the groundwater, so that tends to push groundwater down out of the bottom of the pond. So the significance of that is that, well, a couple things. First of all, as I pointed out earlier, the pond is recharged by groundwater falling both on the pond or rainwater falling on the pond and groundwater flowing in at the north end through the little stream and possibly by springs. So the influence, the thing that influences the pond and the thing that influences groundwater is basically the same source, which is recharge from precipitation. So the patterns look very similar. But based on this data, it shows that the pond is higher than the groundwater elevation. And so when the groundwater level drops, the pond continues to leak at the same rate. So the lower groundwater wouldn't induce more leakage from the pond. And if the pumping were to reach up under Long Pond, which the data suggests that it doesn't, the pumping lowering the groundwater level wouldn't draw the pond down. The pond is actually independent, and it leaks out the bottom and feeds the groundwater. So that's a now that we have that survey data, we understand that better, and it shows that the pond is not as susceptible to groundwater withdrawals as was suspected, I guess, without that data. So the influence of the groundwater on of pumping on Long Pond is less than we previously understood, which is, I think, important. Obviously, I also want to talk a few slides about the drought. We all know that, the last 6 or 8 months at least, up through March, the end of March, has been a significant drought, probably worse than it's been since 2001. And that drought affects everything that is influenced by precipitation, including groundwater. So first of all, the ordinance has a condition and a reference to the Palmer Hydraulic Drought Index, which we followed. It was severe beginning in November and through April, and in some cases, a few weeks, it was extreme, so fairly dry. Even under those conditions, the springs, which are, again, as Mark pointed out, they're at the top of that water table. They're the most sensitive to changes in the groundwater system, and the springs continued to flow. So this is a hydrograph. This is of the elevation of Spring 2. This is that Spring 2 piezometer. This is a picture taken, during the drought. You can see water. It's a little hard to see, but you can see water still coming out of those pipes, and those pipes are at least a foot, maybe 1.5 feet higher than the actual water surface. So there's quite a bit of pressure that's continuing to have that flow. And as you can see, during the drought, it came down, but it continued to flow. This is the alert level. This is the action level. The action level for the spring points would be if the this water pressure was lower than the ground. So that would be the situation in which the springs stop flowing. And as you can see by the data, and you can see sort of visually, even those sensitive springs continued to flow during the drought. There's a couple of things I want to point out. This just for number people, you can sort of see this is the actual amount of rain. This is the normal amount of rain during these months. And as you can see, November, December, January, February, all way below normal. But then as we got out to the end of March, April's still below normal, but there's some rain there and there's a little bit of snow that melted. And this is the same kind of data from one of the monitoring wells. So this starts, I think, in July. So in July, it was, getting drier. The water levels went down. In March, they were the lowest they got. But once it started, once we got that snow melt, and once it started to get a little bit of precipitation again, they came back up. And that's what we would expect them to do, is they rebounded. Again, here's the alert. Here's the action level. The other thing to point out, just so you are aware, is that this is the weekly pumping by Poland Spring. And as the drought got more and more significant, Poland Spring voluntarily did reduce their pumping. So they were also sensitive to the fact that, when there's less water, you need to manage appropriately, which they did. So of the suite of wells that have action and alert levels, if you will, almost all of them remained a half a foot, or in some cases up to maybe 1.5 feet above the alert level through the drought. So they were, there was a buffer there. There were 2 locations, one of which got equal to the alert level and one of which was close to that. And in the application, we have proposed to adjust those so that they're consistent with the overall. Again, as Mark mentioned, the ones that are the most sensitive to the whole system are these springs. That's what's most sensitive to the pumping influence. And so that's a good indicator. And also the alert, the action for the springs is sort of real, if you will, in that they would stop flowing when you get to that point. Another thing that I read it in one of the older ordinances, and I just want to point out, and I think this graph reflects that, is this line on the bottom. So the action and alert levels, they're good management tools. I think it makes absolute sense to have something like that as part of the ordinance. But I think it's important also to be clear that if the water gets to the alert or if it gets to the action level, there's no permanent damage to the aquifer. The aquifer will do, when it starts to rain again, it will rebound, just like we see it here. And so it's important that people don't think that if you get close to those levels, there's some irreversible condition that's going to happen, and there's some permanent damage that needs to be avoided, because that's not the case. So again, they're useful tools. They help manage the system in a even more sustainable way, but they shouldn't be misinterpreted as having some long-term negative irreversible consequence. And finally, a couple of slides just about monitoring. A key component, and I think you guys all realize this. So back in from 2005 to 2010, there was a lot of studying that was done, an analysis of the aquifer and so forth, that made estimates based on the science and the data of what was going to occur under the operational conditions. But where the rubber really hits the road is this monitoring network. So what's really being done and what's being watched over time. So there's really not a significant change to this, but the yellow dots here kind of give you a magnitude understanding that there's a lot of monitoring that's going on. There's quite a bit on near the boreholes, but then there's monitoring up around Long Pond. There's some domestic wells out. There's the brook monitoring here. So it's a pretty extensive network of monitoring that has been monitored for the last, almost 20 years now, and will continue to be monitored. And that's the data that shows us what's really going on with the system over time, when it's wet years, when it's dry years, and so forth. The ordinance has some specific requirements, and some of these practices have already been in place. So when the weekly pumping rate exceeds 200 gallons a minute, monitoring will become weekly for the following week in a select number of wells and spring points. So we'll continue that. When the Palmer hydraulic drought index is severe, those same wells will be monitored twice monthly. Right now, the ordinance doesn't say anything about. There's no requirement to increase monitoring frequency. So just to clarify, And again, as Mark pointed out, all these changes are happening slowly. And so we just want to get something in there that is a defined monitoring frequency under those more severe drought conditions. There's some additional water quality monitoring. The annual monitoring is done already. The ordinance has a component of surface water monitoring. So we're proposing to do some monitoring in Beaver Brook to establish a baseline for 3 years. There's also a component of domestic well monitoring. There was a comprehensive analysis of domestic wells at the beginning, when the pumping first started, that the town already has. What we're proposing is to do some additional monitoring in these wells are in particular because they're in the sand and gravel aquifer. The other wells are in bedrock and are going to have different quality anyway. So that's a component of the application. As I mentioned, the action and alerts, we're going to keep, we're not proposing changes to those except MW3 and MW11, which were unusually different during the last drought condition. And then there's a description about reporting, continuing reporting to the town in the same frequency as before and under action. There's some specifics about action and alert reporting and so forth, all of which is reflected in the application, I believe. So yeah, just in summary, I guess, we now have 15 years of operational experience at the Cold Spring site. Nothing's been proposed, no changes are proposed for this renewal. And I think what we've seen is that precipitation is really the key driver in groundwater and surface water conditions. That somebody should have put an E in there. Apologize for that. That the springs, even during this drought, the springs, which are again the most sensitive, they're the ones at the very top of the system, continued to flow. We see stable groundwater conditions over time. Variability is explained by seasonal and year-to-year differences. Surface water flow has continued, more or less unchanged. And then again, we have this new, I'll call it new, although it's not really new. We have some additional data on Long Pond that shows that the groundwater changes in groundwater are really not what influence the level in the pond. It's the inflow in the precipitation from the up gradient side and then leakage out the bottom. So I think that is all of the hydrogeologic information, and there's more in the, as I say, doesn't have all the details, but I'm going to turn it over to Dan in a second about the decommissioning plan, but if anybody has any questions or any things you want to talk about, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
That was the one that reached.
Yeah. Do you want to ask me to show it? Can you show where MW3 is?
Yep.
The location on the map?
Yep.
That's the one that did reach the action level.
So
Alert level.
Alert level, yeah. So MW3 is right here. Again, the influence of pumping is greatest close, and it gets further out. It gets less as you go further away. And MW3 is there's a small influence of pumping out at that distance, but MW3 is again primarily influenced, as is MW8, by just what the groundwater is doing. I mean, what the overall system is doing. And everything was going down. Yep. Go ahead.
Can you show that on the zone of influence map?
Yep. Apologize for the scroll here. So MW3 is right here.
Okay.
So again, that's half a foot of influence after 180 days with no recharge. So it's pretty far out on this area here. And again, almost all of the wells were a half a foot to a foot above the alert. That one stood out to be quite different. That difference is not related to pumping. It's just the estimation of what the low water table would be back when it was done, for some reason came up with a different number. It just wasn't consistent with the other data. This is the first time we've had a chance to really test those action and alert levels. So what we found is there were I'd say a couple that just seemed different. And there's no particular reason why there would be preferentially a lower condition here compared to somewhere closer in.
Where's 11?
And 11 is closer for sure, but again, there's 11 is here, and then there's another 5 or 6 other wells also in the same area, Andy, that were all 1 to close to a foot above the alert level. And 11 again stood out as being quite different. And in the application, we describe how we've made that adjustment to make them more consistent with the other data, other levels. And we certainly can have a technical discussion as we go forward on
That'll
that.
follow with the,
Yeah,
after the
Yeah.
completeness review.
sure. So yeah, those are the changes, because those two stood out as not being consistent. And again, it's important to look at those as management tools, and it doesn't make any sense, in my way of thinking, if you have a group of 11 locations sort of spread out here, and they're all okay, they're getting low, and then you have one out here that's meets it. Is there a reason to do you need to do anything? Do you need to get worried if this one reaches this level when everything else closer in is fine, if you will, is above that alert?
Well, that's a geology question, isn't it? Why that?
Well, I can answer the question. I asked.
Yeah, I don't know if you can answer it.
The answer is there's no reason in the world to worry about this well if this stuff is fine. And in fact, even if they were to manage pumping dramatically, because this is far out, they can't really make much difference on this well, because it's just not that influenced by the pumping. So it's if you go back to the comments that the DEP made when they reviewed this application, one of the things they said was that, because they reviewed this idea of action and alert stuff as well, and one of the things they said is that they supported, and that energy should be focused on setting action and alerts at the springs, because those are the most important. And as you move away from the springs, that the chance that the probability increases that these more peripheral wells are less influenced by pumping and just more influenced by other stuff that's going on. And in this case, the aquifer was going down. Everything was going down. And that's really what was reflected in these outer wells. So the fact that it was going down doesn't necessarily mean that had anything to do with the pumping. The whole system was going down. And so I guess that is the reason to make that adjustment so that they're consistent across the board. So, any other questions?
Anything, Rick, or- No? Okay. Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Pardon the scrolling. Again, my name's Dan Diffin with CV Maher Engineers. We're a company based out of Cumberland, Maine. I lead our civil engineering and permitting group. We helped pull the package together. Matt did all the hard work, to be honest, and we kind of made the copies and put together the decommissioning plan, which I'm trying to get to a quick summary of what we pulled together. So there's a full written application, or I'm sorry, a full written decommissioning plan in the application, but I've kind of tried to summarize it here on the screen with some of the major components: mobilization to site, demo of borehole buildings, borehole abandonment. These are kind of the summary of each line item. In particular, we've included cost and construction to remove all site fencing gates and above ground improvements, disassemble and remove the structures out there and the buildings and the building foundations. The well pumps and the boreholes will be removed. The boreholes will be abandoned and permanently sealed with the casing cut down 48 inches below grade. And then the underground water line, electrical conduit will be cut down below grade and abandoned in place. The gravel area around the wells, which is essentially the maneuvering area around the wells, the gravel will be scarified, and we'll place loam and seed over the top of that to establish vegetation going forward. Here is a summary of the cost of all that kind of work. Mobilization to site is just to get equipment out there. We assume 10 grand or so, probably a conservative estimate for what we're proposing, but wanted to make sure we were covered. Demo and removal of the borehole buildings and foundations was around 15.6. The real cost sink here is the borehole abandonment. We assumed about $25,000 per well, which is maybe a little conservative, but again, we want to make sure we have our costs covered. The abandonment of the water piping and systems to cut and remove the sections that are within that 48 inches of grade, and then abandon the rest in place. Cut and cap, we would put caps on each end of those pipes. And then the site and road restoration, you can see there is around $20,000. So the total cost of decommissioning was assumed to be, was calculated to be around $102,760 or so. No, that's not me, right? No, okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't about to shut down. No worries. You can see here we've kind of established a preliminary schedule for what that work would look like. Essentially, what we've used for triggers in our plan, and we'd love some feedback from the board, is that after 24 months of inactivity, or if Poland Spring ceases operations, this decommissioning plan would come into effect. And week 1 would be basically mobilization and getting erosion control in place. Week 2 through 4 would be taking down all of the above ground improvements and abandoning those water pipes and electrical conduits. Week 4 through 6 is abandoning boreholes and some site work associated with that. And then finishing off the site, kind of cleaning it up, loaming and seeding, making sure grass is taking off. Obviously the grass catch would have to happen after week 7 or 8, but that would be the schedule for actually getting it in place. And so that's kind of the rough summary, the overall view. I can pull up a site plan if the board is interested in seeing what's out there now, but happy to field questions if needed.
I guess the only question I had was when I looked at that, the pipeline, is that included in here?
Yeah, so what we've included there is to cut the ends of the pipes that are within, 24 inches or 48 inches of grade, and abandon the pipeline in place in between.
Meaning doing what?
Just to leave the pipe. We'll cut and cap, we'll fill it, we'll fill over the top of it, and we'll leave the pipe.
But you're not going to fill the pipe itself?
We had not included that. We can,
Okay.
we can
Then we
consider
had
it.
some, then again, this is more of a technical thing.
Sure,
Maybe this
yeah.
isn't the right time. That's just something maybe we'll talk about.
Okay.
Something we'll
We can-
bring
we
up.
can
Because
look
that's
into
what I
that.
thought. It seemed like a low price. I'm thinking, how are they filling that pipe up?
Yeah, we wouldn't usually fill in water pipe. I mean, usually you'd fill in the bigger, larger pipes that might create voids or issues with stable surface over the time.
Yeah,
But
this is something I know we've discussed in the past, but we could talk about
okay,
that a little
great.
further.
Yeah. Any other questions or? My job was much easier than Matt's, so I'll turn it back over to Mark to kind of wrap it up.
Thanks for your patience. We'll just wrap it up here quickly. As you heard tonight, the ordinance and our work really tests well and has responded well through drought. We have a really robust aquifer here, or else we wouldn't be here. I think Rick can attest to that the aquifer sustaining itself through the drought has been a good sign of its health and sustainability. It's also, the ordinance is also protective of climate change. We do regular monitoring. We're out there every month, like I said. We've been out there every month for, since 2004. So that's a lot of time committed to the water level monitoring program. I know 100 million gallons might seem like a lot. That's what the permit is for that we have today and what we're seeking for. But keep in mind, that's about on an average year, that's about the rain that falls on 100 acres. Okay, so our whole operation, if you had a tarp from Rennie's, a big blue tarp, and you could get one that was 100 acres in size, that's the amount of water we use. Meanwhile, we own hundreds of acres in Denmark where the water just naturally flows continuously. So we think the impacts are very localized. Matt showed you the graphics about how those drawdown cones are very localized around the boreholes. They don't reach Long Pond and they don't reach Beaver Brook. I think, Rick, you could probably contest that if we were to induce infiltration, that's what people are asking about. Could we withdraw water directly from the pond into the aquifer and into our wells? I think looking at the data, I believe that if you were to induce infiltration, if things were to get that low, you'd probably induce water out of Beaver Brook before Long Pond, because Beaver Brook is right on the edge of that drawdown cone area. So we've had no adverse impact to water resources and surface water bodies and brooks, streams in Denmark over the last 5 years. Matt described what we think is a leaky pond. The bottom of the pond, Long Pond, is covered with organics. They're probably very thick. You can core through them. You can actually find out how thick they are, but I've cored some ponds in Maine, and there's relatively, when you have a closed depression like this, Long Pond has no outlet, so there's no way for the water to clean the pond out. So everything that falls into the pond, leaves, everything every year just piles up at the bottom. So that's why we think there's another mechanism that keeps Long Pond from directly recharging the aquifer, except through some leakage. I think I explained pretty confidently that I'd much rather do other things than real-time monitoring. I think it would be easier to put this transducer, it'd be more fun to put this transducer on a snail and watch the snail go around than watching these water levels. They're quite boring, and the month-to-month data don't really show you much. So if we're not seeing much month-to-month, you're not going to see much in real-time data. I'd much rather do field trips out there. I'd open it up to anybody that wants to do a field trip and come out and see the springs and come out and monitor water levels, as Rick's team does quite often with us. So that's all that we have tonight. If you have any additional questions you haven't asked yet for the board or Rick, let us know.
So, Penny, do we want Rick to touch on his comments on some of the higher level things?
Yeah. I think the board, myself, and the town's technical engineer has done like a preliminary review. And there are a few areas that I think Rick can touch on, if you don't mind, on where we think it's not considered complete. We can provide you this too after the meeting.
Thanks, Betty.
You're welcome.
And we are going to put a copy on the website also.
Yes.
So what we're going to provide Poland Spring of Rick's comments right now will be available to look at on the town website.
So for those who are here in attendance as part of the public, I want to reiterate that we're in the completeness phase for this application. So my review was to look at each response in the application and compare it to the ordinance for completeness. In other words, does it meet the language? Does the response meet that language? And some of what I'm about to say will seem like a little bit of a hair splitting, but you know, there's just a few things. There's several items that need to be dealt with in the permit application, so we can get to the later technical discussion about, you know, about the whether or not Long Pond is leaky, you know, whether or not there's any influence from pumping, because at this juncture, you know, I've seen lots of data, and there's certainly, it's still a data gap in my mind. So there will be more technical discussions. This is about the completeness of the application, so we can get on to that the fun stuff, which will be that technical stuff. So you know, again, I focused my review of this application specifically with regard to specific chapters of the ordinance, and we're looking at the application, and it's basically Chapter 4, Section 2, items 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and I could talk a little bit about those as I go through this. But a lot of the things that I reviewed, there's 11 pages here that I have, and the application, I'm citing every place that I find that the application is complete to move on. But I think there are just 4 or 5 places where we would like to see a little bit more information to deem it complete. And I can go right to those. I mean, to save you going through these 11 pages, I guess this will eventually be published, so you'll be able to see the work that I've done. When it comes to ordinance chapter 4, section 2, item 7.4, when you in the application, it's about quantity. A statement of quantity of water to be extracted expressed as 1, a maximum annual total, 2, the maximum monthly rate by month, and 3, the maximum rate within a 24-hour period for each extraction site, and in aggregate for the entire proposed large-scale water extraction. I think the application does a good job, with the exception of it's missing the maximum monthly rate by month. So we'll need a table included in the next iteration of the application that takes the proposed water extraction by month and gives us a gallonage, and obviously it's going to add up to the 105,100,000 gallons. So that's the first thing. And again, there's lots of good stuff with the application. I found a lot of sections to be relatively complete. Again, technical merits aside, because there will be more discussion about that. Let's see. Okay, this one's for you, Dan. So ordinance chapter 4, section 2, item 10, the small scale plan. So there's lots of items that I won't read all this stuff, but there's basically 10, 11 different items, different things that we've asked for in the ordinance, and I think you've met most of them, but there's a few things that we'd like to see added to this plan, and for now it's not considered technically complete until those are done. And I'll just read those. The reference map does not include the location and identification of all butters to the applicant's properties within item, in a consistent way, basically with item 10.1. A second figure could be added to show those details if you find it's too cluttered. I'm just giving you a little bit of advice there. And you know, obviously we're all worried about having a map that's too busy. Item 2, the reference map does not show the limits outside perimeter of the aquifer cited in the application per 10.2. The map shows only a partial view of the aquifer. Now, this is a big expansive aquifer, so you may need another figure to show the entirety of the applicant, but that's what the ordinance says. It says, thou shalt show the aquifer. We're expecting that you're going to show the whole aquifer. The reference map does not show the property boundary lines, including the number of acres of land. You talk about it in the text, but you don't have the number of acres, and you don't have the property boundary lines adequately showed. That's per 10.3. The reference map does not show the location of all water bodies within 500 feet of the outside perimeter of the aquifer. Again, a nuanced point here. It's just something that and again, realize that Poland Springs is before us to talk about a permit renewal. In the future, there may be other people, and that's why some of this language exists, but we still expect that you're going to meet it. The map does not appear to show any easements or right-of-ways along the pipeline that may be established, and I don't know whether or not this exists. Along the pipeline route that's item 1010. And this one's regarding the hydrogeologic investigation, which is the report that Matt at Drumlin was able to do. Thank you, Matt, for doing this. So that's basically ordinance chapter 4, section 2, item 12 deals with this. And there are a number of items that I think 15 or 16 in totality that you've got to deal with. Most of them I find that you have, technical merits aside, you have met for most of those things. There's just a few things. And again, one is back to the map that you have in there, because per 12.1, a map of the aquifer or aquifers within the zone of contribution to the well springs excavations from which the water is proposed to be extracted. So basically, you need to show the whole aquifer in this case because it does extend outside the zone of contribution, but I think it's germane to show it all. 12.3, a licensed geologist interpretation using collected data of the potential for applicants' proposed withdrawal to cause excessive drawdown in other nearby aquifers within 1,000 feet of the primary extracted point. So, so I'll just read what I have here. The hydrogeologic investigation report does include a licensed geologist interpretation of the potential cause of excessive drawdown within its aquifer, but not in nearby aquifers. And Matt, I acknowledge that these may not exist, but I think we need some language in there that discusses that whether or not these occur. Obviously the report includes this because the report doesn't specifically discuss that potential to cause excessive drawdown in other nearby aquifers. It can't be considered complete. 12.7. Applicant's estimate of sustainable daily, monthly, and yearly large-scale water extraction operation withdrawal rates supported by pumping test data, which I'll acknowledge that the 2005 and 2008 pumping test work that was done by others is what you're leaning on relative to the rates that you're asking for. And I think based on my review of that information, I think, again, this is a little bit technical, but I do agree with where we are relative to that stuff. But this is, again, another little nuanced point that the application does include a discussion of the sustainable daily and yearly withdrawal rates. But in this case, it's only considered a partially because you need to discuss the monthly withdrawal rates as written required by that item. 1214, again, still in the hydro report. The characteristics of the aquifer or other groundwater source including rates of drawdown and recharge, sustainable extraction rates, aquifer boundaries, recharge areas, impacts on the water table, and impacts on any and all existing water bodies, including but not limited to lakes, ponds, rivers, streams, and wetland areas and private wells or other existing extraction locations within the zone of contribution. So that's a lot, but that's specific to within the zone of contribution. So it does include a lot of this information. So the 2021 permit renewal hydrogeological report, update report included in the application does include information on the characteristics of the aquifer in section 3.2 that discusses the rates of drawdown and recharge parenthetically only in the prior 2005 and 2008 reports, at least from a technical standpoint. References sustainable extraction rates in section 4.1.2, aquifer boundaries and recharge rates in section 3, and potential impacts on Long Pond, section 4.3.2. I could not find specific discussion on the potential impacts to surrounding private wells. So I think that needs to be specifically called out. And we've heard from this group that you don't feel that there will be impacts. So I think this will be some language that you can add that we can then later have technical discussions around. Let's see. Okay, action and alert levels. Chapter 5, Performance Standards, Section 2, Action and Alert Levels. There's a lot on action and alert levels. I'm going to save the audience from me reading this, probably badly. There's a lot there, but I'll just read what I wrote relative to this. Is that the application has provided a series of action and alert levels for 15 observation points, including spring points and observation wells currently in the monitoring program. These action and alert levels can be found in the report. I'm just going to summarize the places. The narrative also includes revisions for 2 observation wells, action and alert levels, MW3 and MW11. Item 3 in the ordinance specifically requests action and alert levels for private wells and surface waters also. In the last several iterations of the select board approvals for this applicant, these were included. The private well action and alert levels were not specifically, were not specified directly, but specified wells are monitored for effects of pumping, i.e. water level trends in hydrographs. Rocky Knoll Dam outflow previously had an action level of 0.4 cubic feet per second and an alert level of 0.48 cubic feet per second. The applicant should include a discussion of these in their application. So it can't be complete until you add those, because these are the all. It has to be encompassed of all the alert and action levels that you're asking for. And I think that was obviously you were focused on the ones that you want to adjust and the observation wells and other things. So I think these just need to be in this application.
And along those lines,
one more.
Rick, for future discussion, just so that it's clear that it's as far as how those were determined, calculated, that's part of the ordinance that, the applicant will work with our technical consultant.
Yep.
So we don't have information on how they were determined years ago. So to arbitrarily just bring them over again, we'd like to see, again, based on information and data, current data of the wells, if they're still applicable and or, how they were gotten to. Because I know you weren't around, Matt, I wasn't around. But there's nothing in the records that really show. And then I think the ordinance is clear on, some types of calculations to be used in coordination with the towns.
It gives you some guidance as to how that.
So that's something that'll come
calculated.
up. It's not necessarily for the completeness, but I just wanted to make sure that is going to be part of the technical discussion.
Actually, the more that you write in this revision, the more it will help lessen the technical discussions later. So if you choose to add some more detail on how those were arrived at, and I know that Matt, you've provided a page and a half on the revisions to the 2 alert and action alert levels for MW3 and MW11. But if you could also tie that back to the same methodology that is recommended in the ordinance, I think that would be a healthier technical discussion later.
Great, so if we got some things back to you in a week to 10 days or so, I don't know, Matt, if your plate's pretty full or not,
Oh, I mean, we can get stuff to them.
week to 10 days or something?
Yeah, there's
Will we
one
meet
more
the
thing, actually.
July 14th date if we do that?
Yeah, we'll do our best. I mean,
Okay, well, we'll do our best to,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and Matt, we can be talking along the way as well. There's one other thing that's also referenced that I wanted to bring up because it may warrant eventually will warrant future technical discussions around this. And that is Chapter 5 Performance Standards, Section 3, Periodic Assessment of the Aquifer, Item 1. And that is, basically, I'm going to read this one just because I think it's important for the audience. Periodic assessment of the aquifer after each successive 10 years of extracting water. Each large-scale water extraction permittee shall undertake a supplemental assessment of the aquifer. The periodic assessment is not intended to require completion of a new pumping test. Operational data and recovery monitoring during non-pumping periods during routine maintenance may be sufficient to meet this requirement, provided that the recovery duration is long enough to be assessed throughout the zone of contribution. The Select Board shall approve a written plan in advance of any new work, documenting how the permittee will perform this assessment. The objective of the supplemental assessment is to assess changes in the aquifer's ability to produce the maximum permitted yield and without undue adverse effects on surface water, spring waters, and private water supplies within the affected or by the zone of contribution of the production wells or boreholes. The periodic assessment shall be completed using operational data and new quantitative data collected. A written report shall be prepared by the permittee to document the means, methods, and results of the periodic assessment work. The report shall be prepared by a state of Maine licensed geologist, luckily Matt, you are one, on behalf of the permittee, and shall include specific language regarding the effectiveness of the current set of action and alert levels and/or the need to modify any action and alert levels, along with a technical justification for doing so. The periodic assessment report shall be reviewed and approved by the Select Board. So a couple things there. You gotta bring a plan to the Select Board, and I know where you're going to go with this, Mark. So I will save you from that. As a part of this permit, you're obviously not obligated to do this, but this is going to be an important technical discussion because I think the Select Board would plan to include your plan, the terms of your plan, in the new approval. You know, thou shalt do this work going forward, and here's what it will look like. Here's when you'll do it, here's what you'll do, and here's when you'll give us results,
So-
kind of thing.
The board's expectation is that the assessment that is going to be done in 10 years,
Nope, you've been pumping so this may become to a legal discussion about when you're obligated to do this, but you've been pumping. I think that it's pretty clear that it says you've been pumping for. No, I'm not an attorney, but it said you've been pumping for more than 10 years, so you're obligated to do this periodic assessment.
but this ordinance, I'm not the legal guy, so I guess I'm just clarifying. The ordinance is a 2024 ordinance. So that requirement starts in 2024, right?
Not again. Maybe the attorneys need to get together. But
Again.
the way I read it,
Yeah.
once you fall under this as a permittee, if you've been deemed to be pumping for 10 years, then you're going to need to do this.
No, it's clearly not in there because that was not my understanding at all. So,
What's not in there?
no problem.
Yeah.
no, there's no details of what that assessment might entail in the hydrogeologic report because
Right.
my
Understood.
understanding was that
You didn't have to do it.
You didn't need that.
No, but it doesn't have to be done now. It has to be done in the future.
For a new applicant. That's the way I think it was worded. That's the way I think. But
It uses the word
question was-
permittee.
With the new ordinance, a new applicant obviously would have to go through 10 years before it's required. You have 15 years of pumping, so we feel that it's more than 10 years.
But
It's
the
10
new,
years.
and new provisions don't apply retroactively, they don't apply backwards in time, so this ordinance applies from this moment forward to us. So the provisions that you've added to this ordinance would apply with this new permit going forward. You don't read new rules and look backwards and make
Yeah.
people change the way they used to do things.
I guess that's.
Change.
No, I understand. We've
Yeah.
had this discussion, but yeah, I mean.
Either way,
It's something that's
we can
technical.
do it if
We'll-
you want.
We'll talk about it
Yeah.
because, I
Thank you.
mean, we feel that just as part of the application approval, we might want that anyway, even if we don't reference the ordinance. Right?
We can do
have
it if
that-
you
we
want.
have
That's
that-
why it wasn't
That's what I
in
said.
there.
We have that,
Yeah,
we have that.
that's why it wasn't in there.
that
No, we know-
choice
I
to
know
do
that.
it.
Yeah, I know that.
But I understand what you're saying, Brian. We've talked about that, and that, that might very well be it, but I think that's something we're gonna definitely request as part of the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you'd like to see it, I think
Yeah.
we will get to
Yeah.
it. We'll prepare something.
no, that's fine. Okay.
It's safe to say, we don't expect any changes to alert and action levels except for 3 and 11. So that's the big change this year, right? There's nothing else.
But again, until we see the data and
Yeah, yeah.
information.
But just to let you know, that's
Whatever you submit, we'll look at.
Yeah.
Right. We'll go from there.
Yeah,
Right. I mean,
no, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Your intent.
no, that's fine. That's fine.
We just wanted to be upfront with that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you.
we could have waited until we said it was complete and then brought this up, but there's no point in that because we want an
Thank
open
you.
dialogue, yeah. That's all I have.
Is there a penalty because there are 5 new doors?
We should have written that in.
Do you want one? No, just.
Check it.
Okay.
So we're gonna get a copy of that?
You will
Yes.
have a copy of
Thank
this
you.
emailed. Yeah, I try to get you all on it, but I
If that
assume
works,
Mark.
by
Just-
tomorrow, it'll be on the
Yeah.
website also, so this way it's,
I can also
Yeah.
send it to you.
yeah.
Yes. So July 14th will be the completion review.
Yep, and in the meantime, I'm sure there'll be discussions back and forth with Rick to address these issues, and then we'll go from there. And if we deemed it complete, then we'll be on with the technical discussions.
I just ask a quick technical or process question. Are you in need of all new copies of the information, or just the pages we're swapping out, or how do you want to handle?
Just pages that,
Okay,
or you can make it as an addendum,
perfect.
would probably be the best
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
for our point, right?
Yeah, again, electronic, and then, whatever copies.
Whatever's changed.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's it, just keep it what's changing.
Excellent.
Okay? All right, we appreciate it. We
Yeah.
look forward to continuing the process. At this point, I guess we'll take a couple-minute break before we just resume our normal meeting.
Back at it.
Back at it. Old business, 83 West Main Street, dangerous building demo bids.
So we did get in 2 bids. I am just going to disclose that I opened these today, did not look at them, had Mickey witness them.
Yep.
Just so I could take copies, so the board could have a copy of each. So there's 4 copies if you want to send those down of the first one. And then this is the second one.
Same thing for.
Yeah. And actually, if you guys want copies of what we had put out for bid, that's what those are.
How many did we send out?
Excuse me?
How many did we send out? How many companies?
We didn't, we advertised.
Oh,
Yeah,
advertised,
advertising,
gotcha,
yeah.
gotcha. Gotcha. I still think the foundation and slabs we should leave to grade, but that's just me.
Well, and I had that question, and I did say that the board had decided that they wanted to leave them, so I asked that all of the debris be removed off of them, and then like the slab of the garage be swept, but left there, and the pits filled.
I assume that's what P and K Sands, they don't say anything about
Yeah, I was gonna
removing,
say,
so
that's
they-
what I was just
yeah,
looking at.
Yeah, they just say remove, handling, disposal, potential, site grading, stabilization, restoration, all disturbance, loam seed. They don't say anything about filling the pit, but I assume that that would be. Site grading.
Yeah, so you can see one gave the option of actually removing, and then,
They must have included it maybe in there.
I don't know, they don't
In
say it.
P&K, yeah, it doesn't say.
yeah, so, I mean, and they did contact me, and P and K did contact me, and that's what I had told them,
You
that
told them that we're
we
leaving.
weren't.
Okay. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward kind of thing. Thoughts? Can we get the, and put it on the bill to have the Public Works cut the grass first? Or is that gonna matter when they destroy everything? It's pretty high. That grass is like 2 feet high now.
Well,
that-
it's not our property,
Yeah,
so
right.
I don't think we can go.
That can't do this, only demo is the only thing
Yeah.
we can do? Okay. No, they just. No. Thoughts?
So-
Yeah.
Regarding, so I had an email conversation back and forth, and I apologize, I should have printed this out with Matt Plummer from P and K. So my response to him was that the site stabilization form was left to the contractor. Please specify what you think is best for stabilizing the area where the trailer is removed, whether that is loam, seed, or gravel. For the garage, we are not expecting the foundation to be excavated. We are more concerned with filling the pits. We want to avoid any disturbance of ground, digging of, we understand soils will be disturbed, but, no digging.
Yeah.
In case there is any previous contamination in the soil.
Yep. That's for someone else to do
Right.
if the property ever
That's
gets
why I
sold.
put, on
or-
number 2, it says demolition, removal, exists, and then disposal of potentially contaminated materials, which I don't think they should get in these two
No.
if they leave the foundation. So I wonder
Yeah,
if
yeah,
they're-
just doing the house and all. I mean, but they might find, they could find, I don't know what you looked at, but they could find 5-gallon,
Right.
a 5-gallon
underneath it.
drum of oil, or not drum, but a
Right.
can and household, which
And I
are
think,
which are
so
hazardous.
like in,
So, I mean, yeah.
in the garage, there
Yeah.
are some 55-gallon
Exactly,
drums. We
exactly.
don't know what's
Yeah,
in
yeah.
there.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, so that will, yeah, as long as they don't do anything, So with McGough, is that your father-in-law or your husband?
It's my father-in-law.
Okay, that's right, well, just right. He's removing everything inside? Obviously, he mentions demo of the garage and mobile home, backfill compact garage pit, remove all metal and debris from area around garage and home. So obviously, when he says demo and removal existing garage and mobile home, that includes everything in it.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
they were a little more specific.
Yeah, right,
So I
yeah.
just want to make sure that, you know, he's got to get rid of all that stuff. As far as, you know, with okay, that's good, crushed gravel. We just want to make sure that, you know, whatever they use to fill the pit and all that is clean. You know, and crushed gravel is a good thing to use, not, you know, recycled soil from somewhere and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So if we move forward, do we have to notify the current owner?
So I asked that question today in an email to our attorney, and I do not see a response yet.
Okay. You know, what's your thoughts?
I mean, take the lowest one.
I think, you know, I'm okay with
The only
that.
right way to do it, I
Just
think.
with
You
the
don't wanna-
first, with the first price, because we obviously, I don't think we should touch the foundation and slab.
Right.
removal. Just to grade, everything to grade.
Mhm.
And just make sure that he's clear with that. Grade, you know, because again, he has extra for foundation and slab removal, but we don't want him to leave the foundation 2 feet above ground. I don't know, Betty, was it clear
I think
in
it's
here?
just a slab.
Was our,
So it's, the
Is it just a
garage is
slab?
a slab. I guess the
Okay.
question would be, is like the mobile home is on like cement blocks. Do you want the cement blocks like
Yeah.
just?
we want grade.
Right, that's what I said when
Yeah.
Clean it
when
right
any
up.
questions came in about that, that's what I had said.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah,
Right.
but that site should just look flat.
Right.
Not, well, you know,
Not flat, yeah,
right,
just,
but,
whatever the mold, but it
Yeah.
should be to grade, nothing should be sticking out, nothing's
Should be
there.
mowable.
Yeah, someone should be able to go up there and just mow and, you know, hit your main rocks or whatever, but that's about it. Any other garbage laying around like he has here from around garage, mobile home, garbage. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, just-
That'd be good. Finally get that done.
so I guess find out first from the lawyer if there's any, or
Right.
we're allowed to just proceed. We got somebody,
yeah.
we're going in.
And I gave anyone who asked for a bid spec, I gave them the court order. And then either they came in and looked at pictures that I had, or I sent pictures that the court saw. So moving forward then, because we had in there that, you know, we would determine like start and end date, you know, based on the contractor's availability, but moving forward, I would wait to hear from the town attorney, and then if
see-
notification
yep.
needs to be made, all of that, then I can do that
And
and
what,
then
and what would
schedule.
be the schedule even after it's done? Do we then notify the court, or do you have to notify
We do
the
have to
people,
notify
whatever,
the
you
court
know,
within 30 days of it being
Complete.
demolished.
I
So we can submit these bids, say which one we took, you know, or accepted,
Yep.
and then when the work was
Can we,
completed.
can we take pictures, not detailed, but at least of the outside, showing the current buildings, making sure we have something beforehand? Because obviously we'll have something after, but just for,
Yeah.
again, future legal things, if someone's claiming, you know,
Yeah,
that was
so
here and you took it, or whatever.
can take
Nothing, yeah, nothing so
current
much inside.
pictures.
Yeah, I mean, we're not looking at necessarily stuff inside that thinks it's garbage. They left it there, they don't want it.
right.
But I'm just saying, for just overall, here's what's there, that's what we demoed to ground. You know,
So how
just
much
for our
interest?
record, you know?
Were there any other contractors that looked at it, or?
It was just these two.
Okay.
Yeah. He's local, we know where to find him.
Yeah, and they.
Well, I'm sure he'll have, if he has any, you know, I'm
Yeah.
sure he
And
understands.
and again, they both, you
Yeah.
know, they both saw it
Yeah.
advertised in the Bridgeton News and on the website.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
contacted me for
It's-
further.
It's nothing we need to, I think we, yeah. It Probably had two I don't know anything about P&K, but we probably had, you know, two good places that could do it, so. it's a pretty good substantial difference. We're looking at about $6,000.
Right.
So, I mean, technically, in the long run, we would get it back, but I don't think there's a reason to go with someone higher, because then the court can say,
Right.
take that off and say, you could charge $6,000 less, you could have went with the lower
Right.
guy, right? I mean,
Right.
That's, so,
Mhm.
okay. Yeah, so after you find that out, let us know, but I think we all agree to go with.
So if I could just have a motion on which contractor, and then I am presuming we have the dangerous building.
Then we have 25,000 or something like that?
Yeah, so I'll just see what I think there's been a little
Yeah.
taken out of that, but,
So then after we do this, for my own purpose again, once it's done, we tell the court, is that, at that point, do you put a lien on the property?
no, we can't lien it. We will send them,
Oh,
once.
bill first.
Once the,
Send them up,
yeah,
right.
so once the court, approves
Mm-hmm.
what we're allowed to recoup, then we'll issue a supplemental bill, and then they have to pay that.
And if they
if
don't?
they don't pay it, then it goes to lien.
Th-
And
th-
then
th-
from
that-
lien, it goes to foreclosure.
How long do you have to wait to go to lien?
I believe isn't it the same?
That's what I was
That's what I
asking.
was
2
wondering.
years?
Yeah, it's like,
Because it's a new, it's a.
So what happens in the meantime? I thought we must have talked about this, if they sell the property. Can they sell the property? Or the court order
Then
won't let
our
them?
lien will be on the property,
Oh,
and,
yeah, but
I
we-
mean,
our lien.
their tax bill,
That's right.
will be on
That's right.
record.
That's right.
And then if
That's
they
right.
haven't
Yeah.
paid it, it will
Then
be
it goes right to
lien.
lien, so if they
And-
sell it, we're getting the money. Yeah, I
Right.
thought, yeah, that's what I was gonna say, I thought we wouldn't have thought about that. Okay, good. All right, so
I make a motion to accept RH LaGolf's proposal for demolition.
for $15,955
Correct.
to do all above-ground work to remove it, as compared to if you want to, $22,400 for P&K sand and gravel out of Naples.
Yep. Second.
I'll second it. Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All
So
right, yep, thanks, Betty. So once you
I will
hear back-
contact
yep.
the contractor, just to let him know, but then also let him know that we're waiting to hear
Yep.
from
Just a quick move forward
the
with,
town attorney on timeline and,
yep, excellent. So when they do that work, if in the future, if like the grass is bad again and all that, then we're going back to the homeowner. If for some reason, basically 3 feet and it becomes whatever our ordinances say, I'm not sure if that even matters.
we don't.
We don't, so.
They can
But, yeah,
go
but-
to a field.
Yeah, well, it's better to feel that
But-
the derelict buildings that someone could get hurt in, so I think that's a better scenario. Okay, great. Thanks for getting it
right.
together.
Thank you.
Next item, MMA Legislative Policy Committee vote.
So this was just, we got the official ballot with 3 names on it: Daniel Loring of the town of Minot, myself, and Adam Garland from the town of Oxford, town manager. And it looks as though you vote for 2 and then just signatures.
Oh, good, so it looks like you might get on it then. You got a good chance.
Good chance, 2 out of 3.
Good. All right, any old business open items?
I do have no open item, sorry.
Okay. New business?
Well,
Old
sorry.
business,
Oh, you do?
other.
I do have an other.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's me.
So-
I missed other.
The town attorney did contact me this morning, said that the Wilder hearing is scheduled for next Monday. The attorney, though, is going to have to ask for a continuation because he is also in the middle of a jury trial, and the judge of the jury trial scheduled a hearing on the same day, which is mandatory. And so jury trial trumps land use violation. So he will be filing that and will let us know when we get a new date.
Try to get this stuff tidied up and fight you. Okay, well, there's nothing, I guess nothing we can do about that.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, exactly. New business, credit card policy. I actually sent you over some comments today.
I see
Earlier.
that now when we got into the meeting.
Yeah, well, I just did it, but I, just as an FYI, I went through most of the policies and stuff and did comments and all that. Like I said, I had time last week. Do you want to just set up a day, we do what we did last time and go through them
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
whenever, next week if you want, or it's matter how quick you want to do it.
Yeah,
Your
I'll-
schedule, I'll let you tell me.
Yeah,
'cause
I'll
I feel
email
busy
you.
and- Yeah,
Yeah.
but in the meantime, what I'll do is I'll send you, even if it's a couple emails, I don't know how many, maybe I could do them on one email, I don't know with the Gmail only lets you do so many, but I'll send you over all of the things I have, so
Okay.
that when we meet, we could just go down. I know the personnel policy, I only got as a PDF, so I know like a couple other things, for instance, the accident policy or something. One of
Yeah.
them, we could get rid of the current policy and just put a little section in. So I like did the little section.
Yep.
But I couldn't put it in because, so there's like 2 or 3 of those that we can get rid of a couple policies and just kind of, because they were so short, the policies. But the other ones I have, a couple of them I wrote because I didn't get Word files. So a lot of them are only one-page things, so I just typed them up myself. And so when we meet, you could compare and I could show
Okay.
you you could see the changes.
All right.
Because even like the Freedom of Information Act, we're wrong with our pricing. It's 10 cents. That's the act says you can't charge more than 10 cents.
Per copy?
Yeah, per page.
Per page?
Yep, yeah. And it says it's got to be over 50 for an estimate, and 100 to pay. Yeah, I looked up it's because it's called 408-A now. So it's the
Oh,
latest.
so they
amended.
amended.
Yeah, so, but anyway, I just typed all that stuff up. But yeah, I think that'll be easier than trying to kind of go back and forth wondering what's.
Okay.
All right, so that'd be good. So I don't know if with this one, if you want to just wait or just.
Yeah, I mean, we should probably just,
Put it
get
with the rest
together
of
and then we'll do like maybe one workshop
Yep.
to go
Yep,
over all of them.
Yep, just go over all the things with you guys, just to show you the differences and stuff.
Yep.
All right, good. Any other new business?
I have no other new,
I just have a couple questions. The tables downstairs, the lines donation, Bob was gonna look into that? Is that still, we're waiting back for him to see how many we need and all that stuff?
actually, I do have a note on my desk. We need 4. With what the Lions sent, I can order 3.
Okay.
So I'll just get those 3 ordered and then we'll figure out.
Maybe ask-
Snowmobile
maybe
club,
ask-
yeah.
Ask Dude if they chip in.
Ask who?
Dude, Dad.
Oh, yeah.
Dude Ranch,
Yeah, maybe, maybe they'll
Yeah,
chip in for
send
one.
I bet if you send an email to Jimmy,
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd
yeah, I
be
bet
great.
they'd
Yeah.
be happy to pay for one.
No, that'd be
If we
great. So
wanted-
this way.
If we really needed 4, so.
Yeah, that's what I say. This way it kind of settles,
Yep.
so this way the Lions know
Yep.
that,
They still got a pretty good turnout on Wednesday nights.
I know,
You
yeah.
know, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
Great.
There's a
It's
lot
like
of
50 cars
places
out.
do that too. Every time you drive through towns now, it seems like there's a bingo night somewhere.
Or something going on.
So it's
yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's good.
No, it is. It's great. The other thing I wanted to bring up too is Bob mentioned that they got a contractor to do the cracks, and I know they did the cracks the other weekend in the town on Saturday and all that, and that's great. This past week they did Rocky Knoll, and my concern is that it was basically a pickup truck pulling, it was like a small company, which is fine. I have no
Yeah.
problem with, and I think they did a good job. It seems like they did a good job, so that's not the issue. My concern was, I almost hit them coming over the road. They just kind of were like, they were blowing the cracks coming towards my house up that hill where the red house is, like in the middle of the road. And I came over the hill, I was like, whoa.
No signs, no
So
nothing.
there's
No high vis, they're walking the road the whole time, they had blinkers on their truck, just blinking. I mean, I just want to let Bob know that, make sure, like I said, I think
If
they
you
did
want
a
to
good.
use them again.
Well,
or
it's just,
whatever.
they're having a sign on each end of the road, just say construction work, so that when you drive up, okay, I better keep an eye. But they were there all day, and when you drove back, it was the same thing. They were in the middle of the road. You could drive around them, they just, every now, because they're walking back and forth the whole road, which is fine, I understand you gotta do that. Just high-vis vests, just for their sake. I mean, because if something happens, that eventually they'll come back to the town, because we hired them. If they didn't, if someone got hurt or if there's a car accident and stuff. I was just concerned that it's just a tight road and narrow and up and down, and, it was a pretty shock to kind of see them, just, with all that stuff. So, you might want to just, tell them, just let them know that that's what they did. But like I said, it seems like they did a good job, stuff's
They got a
there.
lot more done than.
Yeah, and I had no problem with hiring them, that kind of thing, but we just need to make sure, like a small company like that they wear at least a viz and put the signs up for that, that's all. But other than that, like I said, I think it went okay.
Mhm.
All right. And this is something I don't think we could ask, but maybe we could ask Bob. Does the fire department still check the church AED fire extinguishers? Did that ever, I know that came up in the past, but is that something they do? I just need to kind of know, not so much tell them they have to do it, because,
I think Bob was working with,
John?
no,
Oh, the
Barry?
Barry
Yeah, Barry,
Hollander on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so I'll follow up, if I see Barry next or something, I'll ask him about it. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's just checking, make sure the battery in the AED doesn't go bad.
Yeah, because we just had to replace some.
Yeah, well, they're only good for so many years, and then they die. All right, good. All right,
Let's put it this way, I have an email that introduced them and that
well,
was-
I'll throw it back to Barry and see if anything's come of it, and if not, we could always bring it up again. I just don't want the battery to die in there or something. Because if the church needs to buy one, then we'll just get another one or something. But
For some
that's
reason, I was thinking
But I thought
Bob said that they needed, I think he's
Yeah, we
ordered
just
them, or they...
replaced them.
Yeah, okay.
Here, but not.
No, I think all,
Oh, did he do that one too?
because I think we're actually responsible for the church, the library here. We're responsible, I believe, for all AEDs
Why would
in
we
the
do?
town.
Why would the
Because
town
we
do-
were the ones who
put them in?
put them in.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine.
Is from my understanding from past.
Okay, no, it's good. Yeah, no, I'll follow up. I'll just have him follow up and see if Barry's talked to him and, that kind of thing. Great. Okay, manager report.
So they came and installed the new cameras here at the town office. Unfortunately, they are not compatible with the new NVR, the recorder. So they're suggesting we replace all of the existing cameras, which is 8, with new cameras. It would be roughly, sorry, he did tell me, I think he said 200 per camera.
Why did they put in something that's not compatible?
These are so old, they're not compatible with anything.
The other 8?
Yeah. The other,
Oh, so they put
and
new
the-
cameras in with a new recorder.
with a new recorder. That was, we needed a bigger recorder
Oh, okay,
because
that's
we
right.
only
Yeah,
have a
yeah, yeah.
recorder to do
8 or whatever.
8.
Gotcha. Okay, so that makes
So
sense.
we brought in a bigger recorder
Mm-hmm.
and the company said, most of the time, you can get them to be compatible.
Yeah.
So right now, we have essentially 2 security camera operating systems going.
Yeah.
We
yeah.
have one that's covering the new cameras and one
Yeah.
that's still, the old is still on.
So is it like you have 2 screens now? 2 computer screens? Or
Well, if I
you
want to
flick
get
around?
another computer screen,
Yeah, you go out.
if not, I have it on my phone on the new
We should
system.
just, but we shouldn't have
But-
2 systems.
Right.
That's not, it's not a lot of money.
And the thing with that is that we could always take the old system, the 8 cameras in the old system, and put it at the transfer station
Yeah.
if we wanted to.
That's a good idea.
You won't get remote access because there's
But
no.
it doesn't
we
matter, you
don't
can go back
need
and look.
it.
Right.
Something
Right.
happens, you got it on tape. Yeah, that's a good
Right.
idea.
Somebody broke the gate, something.
Yeah,
happened,
yeah,
you
you
could
shine
go
it at the
back and
gate,
see.
shine it all at the dumpsters and,
So
yeah.
the monitor that's currently on the cabinets in there, is that all the cameras, or
No.
there's other cameras with them?
There's other cameras, we just don't have access to them on a monitor, because we
Okay.
would need a separate monitor, and I didn't want to buy one until,
That's for the old system or new system?
so the one that's on there now is still, that
New.
we're seeing is the old monitor, because it monitors this
Gotcha.
room, it monitors the hall.
Your new one is on you have on your
The-
phone. so-
Yeah,
Does the Public Works have cameras?
No.
no,
Oh,
well, fire station does, so
Maybe,
that's
uh,
Should
another.
we think about
Maybe,
them down there rather than?
well, maybe
down
with the
maybe or
salt
something?
shed thing, we could throw them in there. You know,
Oh, right, yeah.
Because you might, you might want to put it on there. We could probably, that's a good point, to bring it up. When we do the salt shed, maybe try to make sure we have cameras on whatever's left in the building, the salt shed and stuff like that.
Yeah, just
So
for,
when we did the new garage, we do all that.
Yeah, but if we're getting a new salt shed thing, we might as well do it. That'd be probably a good time. So,
So it'd
Okay, yeah.
be between 14 and 1,600.
I think,
He says usually the cameras are 200 each, but he would do them at 150, which
Yeah.
is his cost, and
Nice.
then probably a couple hours of
Yep.
labor.
yeah. I think we should just do it.
Yeah.
We have
It's a
our
safety
new
issue.
fiscal year starting, so
Get with
we can take them out
Yeah.
of the building.
That's fine.
Yep.
I think that makes sense. Again, that's a big safety issue too, just to make sure we have one. But that's good suggestion.
And do you want
for the-
then this system, do you want me to schedule him then to put this system at the transfer station?
Do we need all,
or-
we don't need all 8 cameras there, do
We
we?
probably don't need all
Yeah.
8, no.
Maybe, yeah, what I would do is maybe, yeah, I mean,
Well,
maybe talk to Steve and Bob and see what makes sense where they would put them.
and
If we
what's,
need like 4 or 5, whatever they think makes the most sense.
and what's the cost and labor to do that versus just buy new?
Well, that's a
I mean,
good point.
I mean, if labor is $500
Yeah.
to put them up there, and we can buy a new system for
We could buy, well,
$300.
you could buy those little
Well,
wall
the-
things that,
The
do you call
new,
'em?
I mean, a new system, what we just put in was, well, I just got the bill right here.
there's so many thousand, wasn't it? A couple
Big
thousand.
money.
So it was $3,600
4 cameras and a new.
for 4 cameras and a new NVR.
But the NVRs
Can
is
take,
big. It's
yeah.
gonna take the other 8.
And now he can lock that up there. It's not as much a big issue.
And I mean, I don't think, I mean, this
Lock
system
the
is
compactor
fine. The system
Yeah.
we have
Right.
is fine,
Right.
like everything works.
It's got
He can
that
lock the
enclosure on
compactor
it,
now,
yeah.
Which used to be the problem.
Yeah, but then it becomes if someone just throw their bags on the ground and leave.
Yeah.
At least you can see,
Right.
if, somehow you have one pointing toward
And
the
that's where we
entrance.
don't have the coverage right now,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
is, like, we have them on the building, I think there's
Yeah.
2 on the building, one pointing out as far as we can, and then one pointing up to the containers as far.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's compatible, if it's compatible with what we have out there, or is he, I guess get a price for them.
Okay.
Get a price for them, what it would cost.
Yeah.
But to use that system over there, and, then you talk to Steve and Bob and see what they think what makes the most sense. Let
Yeah.
them figure it out. He knows what needs to be put everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good idea, though. Anything else?
I would just ask the board if they would hold an emergency executive session tonight under 1 MRS 4056A, which is personnel matters.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is that it then? Before we
That
get to
is,
that?
yeah.
Okay. Clerk, treasurer, and tax collectors report.
Okay, I just provided the end of the month taxes received to date and what was due. We mailed out the certified lien notices. And I'll be filing the 2026 tax liens on Monday, the 13th.
And that's for the 79,000?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
right,
Okay.
less whatever
Comes
payments
in.
come in.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everything, yeah. And then the excise tax collected to date.
So the 25 taxes,
Yes.
is that what's still due, 107,000?
No, that was just saying what, comparing it to what the 2025
Oh, at this
taxes
time?
were last year.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
that was-
So we've
that was what I
collected
was gonna
more.
ask.
Yeah.
this year than we
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
Right.
that's good.
And,
Gotcha. And what do we use for the budget for the excise tax?
For excise was
250?
220.
220?
It might be
250
250 now, or
250, okay.
230. I think we were doing 235. I might have upped it to
Okay.
250.
Right.
I do have the May Northeast Bank reconciliation. Signatures. Looked at our interest earned on the Northeast account for the past 11 months. $79,999.
Wow.
That went from 0 to 79,000, right? That was
Right.
great. That was excellent. And the rates should be pretty stable, if not go up a little, which will keep them stable. So I would think this year probably will be pretty similar.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
think so.
They're not looking to get dropped anytime, so that's good.
And I just have the payroll, last 3 weeks of payroll warrants and today's AP warrants. Signatures.
Okay, anything else?
That's all?
Okay, public comment. Got anything, Drew? All right, I hear a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You can't,
Oh,
sorry.
oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
We'll try, well, we got to officially go into.
yeah, I make a motion, we go into executive session, whatever that, one MRSA, whatever Betty said.
Yes. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.